The answer to this question, I won't accuse the Canadians or the Jamaicans of protectionist the way that the Canadians would like to. The question is, why should the executive be involved, whether it's the Treasury Board in Canada, or the Cabinet of Jamaica, or the Cabinet of Guyana? Why? Why? Mr. Speaker, there can be no responsibility without involvement, participation. Absolutely. One cannot hold the cabinet responsible for the outcome of a process in which the cabinet plays no role. That is a very fundamental principle. That's a very fundamental and cardinal principle. How can you hold the cabinet responsible for the outcome of a process or the cabinet to be excluded from any involvement in that process? How could one possibly do that? If one plays no role in a process, then one must necessarily be absolved of any responsibility for the outcome of that process. It goes without saying. It goes without saying, sir. If you're the CEO of a company, and you're going to be held accountable and responsible and answerable to the shareholders of your company for a process or an activity of your company, then you must, by definition, be given some authority over that process. If you are excluded from that process entirely, you are told you have no authority, you have no role to play, you have no responsibility in this function, then surely, sir, your shareholders must also say to you, we are absolving you of any responsibility. Surely, sir, if you will exclude any entity or individual from a process, then you must absolve them of responsibility for the outcome of that process. That goes without saying. That goes without saying. Goes without saying. It is the executive, it is the cabinet that under our constitution has collective responsibility for the execution of the national budget, for the incurrence of expenditure, for the completion of projects, for ensuring that projects are executed within budgetary allocations, for, in those instances where projects require additional funding, to consider whether we can accommodate the additional funding required fiscally. It is the cabinet that is responsible collectively for the fiscal outcomes of the country. It is the cabinet that is answerable to the people of the country for timely execution of civil works, funded by monies approved by this National Assembly. It is the cabinet and the government that is accountable to the people of Ghana for the outcome of those processes. That is why indeed we're subject to the scrutiny of this National Assembly, and most welcome scrutiny it is. Yes, most welcome scrutiny it is. We have nothing to hide. And so, sir, this goes to the core. This goes to the core of the issue of accountability. If I will hold you accountable for a process, I cannot exclude you from involvement in that process. And if I exclude you from involvement in that process, I must absolve you of any responsibility.
To give you personally contract, that is what you want. That is what you want to make it. And this will get the contract there.
And so, Mr. Speaker, that, sir, is the core of this matter. That, sir, is the core of this matter. For as long as we will hold the cabinet responsible and the executive responsible for public administration in accordance with the laws of our country, for as long as we will hold the executive and the cabinet responsible for implementation and execution of the budget, for as long as we will hold the executive and the cabinet responsible for the fiscal outcomes of our country, we cannot exclude the executive and the cabinet from involvement in the process of the party. And that, sir, is my simple submission. And requiring an extension, sir. And so, Mr. Speaker, I submit to you, respectfully, that this bill on the surface appears simple, just restoring the status of the 2003 bill in the condition in which it came to this House. That is to say, by the repeal of 54-6. But it goes much beyond that. This bill addresses very fundamental issues about the role of government under our constitutional architecture. And I submit to you, sir, that we all acted in error by inserting that subsection 6 in 54. And I urge this House to correct the dilemma that was created, the contradiction that was created by the insertion of this 54-6 by timely passage, that is to say, passage today of the procurement amendment bill currently before us. And those, perhaps not so few words, sir, I commend the said bill to this honorable.
Honorable, I invite Mr. Carl Greenwich to present his comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, colleagues. I must say, Mr. Speaker, that I feel privileged to find that my name has featured in this presentation so many times when the Minister of Finance is making his submission to this House. And it takes us, I think, to the heart of the issue before us. That instead of dealing with the challenges which confront this country, the difficulties which our policies are supposed to solve, we get carried away with broadsides against personalities. Even when they're completely irrelevant to this issue. The only comment that I have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The only argument that I heard the Minister make, the distinguished and honorable Minister make, with which I can find some sympathy, is the one that suggests that there is outside, and perhaps amongst members here, a mistaken perception about the role of the Public Procurement Commission itself. But it doesn't really matter because the government has never shown any intention of establishing, according to the Constitution, a Public Procurement Commission. Of course, the commission is not going to be a guarantee against the manipulation that we currently see in the award of tenders, at the level of evaluation, and the award of bids. It can't solve that problem. It is a review body, and he's right. The Constitution itself is very clear. It gives it an oversight body to monitor and review the functioning of all public procurement systems to ensure that they are in accordance with the law and such policy guidelines as may be determined by the National Assembly, not by the Cabinet, by the National Assembly. That's a difference. Article 212A(1). Mr. Speaker, we are being regaled here by PDP members concerning the manner by which a consensus, unanimity was arrived at by this House. We are being regaled about, I was not here, the Minister, the person who was here that matters is the Speaker, the former Speaker, Mr. Ramkaran. And just for the information of you, your colleagues, Mr. Speaker, let me just remind colleagues that when a member of this House purported to interpret the process by which that unanimity was arrived at, the Speaker, in very, very unambiguous language, accused the member of being economical with the truth, indeed fabricating the background. And the story told by the Minister of Finance a few minutes ago was no less fanciful. It was another Nancy story.
not impute any improper motive on any member.
It's not a motive, Mr. Speaker. I'm merely citing the words of your predecessor.
Yeah,
As
but
regards the accuracy.
I know, but they pertain to a comment made by a member, but you now transcribed and brought them into the house. That's the difference.
Mr. Speaker, I hear you and I'm moving on. The point I'm wanting to make is that the explanation given as regarding the supposed contradiction between subclauses of the Procurement Act, number 8, is really, that is what I'm saying, is a Nancy story also. Okay? And we cannot accept that an entire house would have voted for amendments, a house including senior cabinet members on the government side, and that a few members can now come and tell us that that was an error, it was an oversight, or that this minister who wasn't there doesn't know by what process this clause was inserted into the statute. He doesn't have to know. The fact is, it is there and it was agreed by this house. That is what matters. Mr. Speaker, the situation today is this. As regards the issues that we have to agree on, the government is claiming that it must, in order to be held accountable for decisions regarding the award of contracts, it must be involved in the decision making. And who can disagree with that? After all, right now, no one will deny the involvement of the government in the award of contracts, and that is the problem, Mr. Speaker. That is the very problem. And when the minister is so kind as to cite the donors with whom the government, or whose practices the government can so warmly and fully embrace, I would want also to be assured that they will embrace the criticisms of those donors about their very procurement process. Mr. Speaker, the question of the structure, the background to which the minister makes reference, trying to suggest that the involvement of the cabinet in the specifics, so as to be able to give a no objection clause, is so critical to the process. Well, let me just say something else, Mr. Speaker. The procurement process in Guyana is supposed to work like this. You have a body termed the National Tender Administration, NTBA, National Tender Procurement Administration, and that body has operational responsibility for reviewing submissions and for awarding contracts. Okay, Mr. Speaker, that is what is in place. And the awarding of the contracts by this body, has been subject to all kinds of criticisms, turning upon corruption, racial discrimination, political discrimination, and all forms of corruption. That body and its processes, it is subject at the moment to no oversight because the government refuses to appoint the commission. And there's good reason why they refuse. But let me say, that body is obviously...
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has pointed to a very serious issue in which he accused the government of racial discrimination. I wish for him to point to any document or any evidence
Honourable members, I listened to Mr. Gurnesh quite carefully. He said there are criticisms. I listed the criticisms, so he never said that. He said these are the criticisms that you make sure, and those are the criticisms. Level this aside, we can't ignore that these are the criticisms, and that's what he said. The criticisms are, if they're on the list, he did not say that the government is. Yes, he listed criticism.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for paying such close attention to my presentation. The point I'm making is at the level at which the procurement system currently works, it is not subject to oversight or review by any particular body simply because the government has failed to establish and put in place either the Ombudsman or the Public Procurement Commission. The body itself that is working, the body that is operational, has 15 members. Mr. Speaker, the 15 members of this body are outlined in the Act, Procurement Act number 8, which the Minister made reference of 2003. And I ask you to be patient. Just let me cite for you from where the 15 members are drawn and who appoints them. The members of the National Board to be appointed by the Minister. Okay? Appointed by the Minister. Okay? This is the Minister who establishes the agency. Okay? The Minister, the body shall comprise Section Part 3, Section 6, Subsection 3. And it points to not more than five persons from the public service, not more than 3 persons from the private sector, and so forth. 2 members of the National Board shall serve on a full-time, and the remainder shall serve on a part-time basis. The Minister shall appoint the chairman and 1 of the members. Mr. Speaker, the point of import in this is that you have a body completely and entirely appointed by the Minister. Completely and entirely appointed by the Minister. And it is appointed by the Minister. All 15 are appointed by the Minister, just for your information. Notwithstanding that, Mr. Speaker, the government seeks, having appointed all 15 members, to a power to, if you like, to override or review or negate the decisions of that body. Notwithstanding the fact that no other body reviews the work of that NTPB. So, Mr. Speaker, we are into an arrangement, a request for the Cabinet to be given the powers not merely to appoint the operatives, all of whom are not subject to any. The Minister doesn't have to have the agreement of anyone in appointing these members. He is not constrained by anything in this legislation. He can appoint those persons, has in fact appointed them, and the result, as we have seen, has been a plethora of complaints about the practices, misdemeanors of the board, the outcome, the results of the board and its activities. Mr. Speaker, the point is this, that if you have the NTPB, and the NTPB has autonomy to do as it sees fit, and all the members are appointed by the Minister, why are we being led to believe that somehow a body that is so fully under the control of the government would not be behaving in a manner that is consistent with the wishes of the government? They're not governed by any rules. And what we are seeking, Mr. Speaker, the whole idea of the Procurement Commission is that the Commission puts in place a rule-based regime. That's the purpose of the Commission. Not the arbitrary things that go on today that lead to the discrimination that I made reference to, that which is public knowledge. If you don't know that, AG, then we have a problem. Because I want to tell you something, that the failure of this body to respect rule-based approaches towards decision-making as regards the award of contract is what has led us to such a poor ranking in the index used not only by Transparency International, but all the international bodies of repute, including some of those named by the Minister a few minutes ago. So that is the essence of the problem. You are seeking to have oversight and further control over a process that you already have 100% control over, leaving no room for transparency or anything else. Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons why one has to refuse absolutely to entertain the government's request for this role to be now enshrined, I don't know about restored, has to do with the fact that the government itself says one thing in public and does something differently in private. Before the president, the current president, was elected, he was prepared to say that this process was subject to some corruption, that it needed attention, and that he would be willing to look at it.
Okay, the order says that the president's name shall not be invoked in aid of any. But it was noted, but
I am not criticizing the president.
it shall not be invoked in aid of any debate. In other words, right, for or against.
Well, I will do that, Mr. Speaker. I will
But it is noted, I'm not saying to go further. I'm not asking to remove it, I'm not saying.
Well, just for balance, Mr. Speaker, I was going to go on to explain to you that having been elected, the president then went on to say that he was going to call upon the different authorities
I can tell that my predecessor never allowed any comment about any president. So I'm saying that there is notice that
I withdraw.
No, I'm not asking to withdraw it. I'm just saying we know that the president has made pronouncements, but I'm asking not to go in depth into them. That's all. I'm not asking to withdraw them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Instead of the president, I would like to cite Minister Ben. Instead of the Speaker, I would like to cite Minister Ben. Mr. Speaker, a number of newspapers reported on September the 13th what seemed to be a minister who had reached the end of his tenure as regards the award of contracts and the difficulties he was facing as a minister under the current arrangements. And I really am interested to know whether those who have been arguing that there are no problems, that it is a fabrication to say that there is either discrimination or favoritism or what have you, I would invite them to look at the words, the language of the minister himself when he was faced by the problems of a Sterling Dilton Supernam for $60 million. $60 million, it was supposed to have been fixed, and shortly after that, I believe even as the minister was speaking, it was discovered that the Sterling once again was subject to collapse. And in response to these events, serendipitous though they may be, the minister reacted with a long tail of complaints about certain contractors enjoying unfair access to contracts. He also made reference subsequently to the problem of one of those very contractors who is responsible for delivering stone to public projects, making reference to the fact that the supply of stone by this contractor was being manipulated. The public was being exploited because the contractor was...
I don't know, Mr. Bridget. Do you have the specific? I remember the exchange, and because the contractor is not present, and so the statement about manipulating prices and so forth. Again, let us be cautious about naming a contractor.
I have not named the contractor.
No, it is not, sorry, it is not difficult to surmise who the contractor is referring to. And so the reference to the manipulation of prices, if it is in your quoting, please quote and give the reference.
Mr. Speaker, several newspapers carry this, and the one that I would like to draw to your attention right now is the Kaichua News editorial of September 13th, which quotes has the minister's words in quotations.
Rather than what comes over as your opinion.
At the same time, the Canadians had an incident in which one of the contractors that worked for us.
If I found it a quote referring to the manipulation of prices by particular contractors, if it is not quoted, I'm going to have it removed from the record.
You're suggesting the minister didn't say that, Mr. Speaker?
No, I'm asking you to
I am not prepared to quote the words. I'm simply saying to you, Kaitro News reported the minister saying these things.
well, that's not, with respect, is not, with respect, that is not the standard that we would expect. It does say that Statute said that the minister said on the 14th of December without a quotation. I don't think I can allow that. I'm asking that the reference to a contractor manipulating the prices be removed from the record because I thought no quote or any direct quote to that effect. So it is removed from the record.
Mr. Speaker,
The minister has been dealt with, it is
the
removed.
minister too. The references that he made to me in respect to he didn't
It
submit.
does say that a newspaper said that the minister said on this date. References to the minister and to the contractor and the connotation of manipulation of prices, i.e. illegality, are removed from the record. Proceed, please.
Mr. Speaker,
Once upon a time, my name
I would like to know, since we are facilitating the minister, whether the minister is denying that he made any reference to this difficulty, that the minister himself raised.
No, Mr. Ben, you are on the no. I haven't invited you to speak. Other members, the question is fair, however, in debate, as council will tell you to your able. No, the door hasn't, but that's another argument. A member is free to use whatever aids he or she wishes to use in the advancement of their argument. However, when a reference is going to be made to a member making statements, and especially those statements cast a dark shadow over both the member's head and any other person, particularly if that person is not present in the house to defend himself or herself or their entity. There has to be a direct quote and a reference. If not, it is not allowed. And Mr. Ben, you are not recognized to speak on this matter. It has been dealt with. If you wish, you may ask the whip to have your name put on the list of speakers later on. But, sorry. Please proceed, Mr.
Speaker, I trust that when the specific quotation is coming, he will be having it restored. Because I am not suggesting that the minister, out of the blue, or I'm not suggesting that the minister said something detrimental to himself.